Hey hackers, Blue Cosmo from CCS here, and welcome to Module 1 of the Introduction to Python 3 course. Now today we're going to be talking about the fundamentals of Python, the sheer basics. So let's go head over to my screen and let's actually make some programs, right? Let's learn how to write the Python 3 language. So let's open up Python idle. Now I have idle pinned to my taskbar, but if you had to go through here to open it, that's fine. Just remember, it's Python idle. Now if you're using a different text editor, then that's cool too. So I'm gonna hold down my Windows key and hit the left arrow to move this pane to the left side. And so let's save this file to our IP3 folder where we're making all of our projects. And in here, I'm gonna make a new folder. I'm gonna call this Module 1. So we can save all of our programs for specific to Module 1 in here. And this Module 1 folder is in our IP3 folder. Cool. So we can call this program hello world.py. Save it. And now you can actually run it even though it's empty. I'm gonna hit F5 to run it, and it will open up the module and it will try to run it although it's empty. And then I'm gonna just have this on the right side, so you can kind of see both of my screens. So you can see me running the code on this right side, and you can see me writing the code on this left side. All right. And my face shouldn't be in the way because there's all this random text up here. Cool. So let's actually talk about Python 3. Or the Python language. So first of all, Python is case sensitive. So if you type in something like this and like this, Python will read these as two completely different things because this has a capital T, this is a lowercase t. All right. So when you're writing script, if I write something in this lowercase, it should be lowercase. If I write something in this uppercase, it should be uppercase. All right. So let's move into the topic of data types. All right. Now there are different data types for different values. If you don't know what a data type is, it's just a type of data. The first data type we're going to cover is string, or a string. And a string is just text. So things like this, or like that, hello. This is all strings. Even numbers are strings. But the thing about a string is that it reads it as text. So 123 or 123 has no numeric value, okay? And so like I am, I don't know, 10 years old. I'm not 10 years old, but clearly. But this is just a hypothetical, right? I am 10 years old, right? This is all string text, but because it's all string text, it's going to be recognized as it being read. So 10 has no value, right? So in order to identify something as a string, we use double quotes or single quotes. All right, and we'll get into this later. But things in these quotes like this and things like that, now it knows that this is a string and that is a string. All right. So it doesn't matter if you use single or double quotes. Now, double quotes are kind of the industry standard because that's what other languages use. Python's the only language that allows you to use single quotes. I used to use single quotes all the time because it was quicker to type. But once you start learning multiple languages, it's better to use double quotes so that way you don't have to change how you write your code for different languages. The next one is integers. And an integer is basically a whole number, right? So things like 1 or 45 or 69 or I don't know, 875. All of these are whole numbers, right? They're integers. There's no decimal points. There's no random parts of it that don't classify it like pi, like 3.14 or 1 whatever. That's not a whole number. That's not an integer. Even things like negative numbers, like negative 12 or negative 49. I'm sorry, negative 49. These are whole number values. These are integers, okay? And Python will recognize these as integers. You don't have to put them in double quotes. You don't have to do anything. The number 4 is the number 4, all right? Python knows that. It's a dynamic language. Now, the next data type we're going to cover is floats. Now, floats are basically numbers, but they're not whole, okay? So things like 42.8 or negative 5.1. These are, whoops, they have to be negative. So these are floats because they have a decimal point. So something like this, although 5 is a whole number, it's going to be recognized as a float because it has a 0.0 in it, okay? So keep that in mind when you're writing code. And then the last data type we'll cover is Boolean. Now, Boolean is spelled like Boolean, but it's pronounced Boolean, okay? And Boolean values are a data type for true and false. Whoops. Now, remember what I said about Python being case sensitive? If you type out true and false, oops, these are two completely different things, okay? Python sees this and knows that these are Boolean values. If something's right or if something's wrong, something's true or something's false, if something's supposed to be how it is and something's not supposed to be how it is. And this will be like, what on earth is that? It doesn't know, because strings, remember strings are in double quotes, right? So this true, and this true are 3 different truths. This is a Boolean value, this is a string, and this is going to make your code crash, right? So in fact, I can actually use the Python module to help display this, right? So there's a command called type, which will show the data type of something in Python, of some sort of object, right? So all of these things we're writing are basically objects because Python is an object-oriented language, but we'll get into that in the module 11. So don't even worry about what I'm talking about right now. So you can type in type, and then we can do hello. Oh, I'm sorry. So type is a function, which means you have to put these 2 little quotes after it. We're gonna get into functions later, but functions are basically something that takes input, it runs an operation on it, and it will return output, okay? That's what a function is. It takes an input, runs an operation on it, and returns it as output. So if we do type hello, it's going to be, okay, it's a string, right? str, string. If we do type, and then we put our true in here, it's like, okay, it's a Boolean, right? But if we do type true, it's going to give us an error. They're like, what is that? There's no, it's not anything, it's not true because it's not the Boolean value of true because it's not capital. And it's not a string because there's not any quotes. So it doesn't know what it is. So it's just going to make your code crash, okay? So those are the 4 main data types we will go and talk about throughout this course. Strings, which are text values. Integers, which are whole numbers. Floats, which are for decimal values. And Booleans, which are true and false, all right? Now, we can also make comments in our code, right? So this is a comment. So you'll see that it didn't do anything, right? So when we're making comments, we use the hashtag or pound or tag, whatever you want to call it. And whatever you put after here will not be ran by the code. So if we hit F5 to run this, nothing happens. And if we make it empty and run it, nothing happens because it's a comment. It's going to read over it. It's not going to do anything with this comment. So what comments allow us to do is annotate our code. So we can be like, this is true, and we can say true, and this, and we can do this is false, and this we can put false. Whoops. Now again, nothing's going to happen because true and false aren't going to do anything to your code. If something, they're just values, all right? They're not going to do any output or anything like that, okay? Now, we kind of saw this error earlier. I'll kind of go into that a little bit. So if you ever see an error, this is what an error basically looks like. Basically, something's wrong with your code, okay? So you either typed in something wrong. It'll kind of tell you what the error is, right? Name error, so name true is not defined. It doesn't know what you're talking about, basically, all right? And we'll go into other errors later on throughout this course, but that's basically the one you can focus on right now. So now we can finally get into outputting code, right? So strings and output. In order to declare a string, you use double quotes or you can use single quotes. We can, put our hello world in here, all right? So hello world is basically the first program you learn how to write in computer science. So hello world, right? So if we run this, nothing's gonna happen, right? Because we have a string, we have data in here, right? We have a data type for a string value and it says hello world, but it's not gonna be outputted because we didn't do anything with this data. So now we're gonna talk about the print function. So the print function allows you to output data, all right? So print, and then a function is always resembled with these two little parentheses, and then you put the data you want to input, then it will run an operation on it, and then it will output it as text. So remember, functions take an input, they do an operation on it, and they output it. Now, the print function, or it won't output it, it will return it. So the print function takes in data as input, and then it will, the operation it does on it is it will allow it to be printed to your screen, and then it will return the value of hello world to our module. So if we run this using F5, you can see we were able to write hello world because we outputted the data. So if we just have random string text right here saying, I don't know, print me, this is not going to be outputted because it's just data sitting in the file. The print will output this data because it takes it in as input. So we're going to hit F5, and it's only going to print out hello world, and it's going to ignore this print me up here. Whoops. I'm going to turn my volume off so it doesn't make that annoying Windows noise when you do something wrong. All right, so let's give ourselves some space and make it look a little cleaner. So that's how you can print, all right? So we can actually use the comments we were talking about earlier and say, this will print, this will output hello world. All right, so now that's your first program. That's it. Congratulations, that's your first program that will output hello world. So you can do anything really. You can have it print hello world, you can have it print your name. Let's put your name, right? Let's do on a blue Cosmo. Oops. There you go. So we can hit F5, and there you go. It prints out blue Cosmo. Now let's, I'm gonna keep this as hello world. To undo, you can hit Control Z. So that's your first program, which is pretty cool. I'm gonna have this fully annotated, and then hello, and we want to say hello to me. So what happens if I do this? Now we want to print my name with quotes. So here's the issue, right? Let's run this and see what goes wrong. Invalid syntax, right? The problem is, if we want to put our name in quotes, but if a string is identified with quotes, it's going to recognize this as a string and then recognize this as a string and some random thing that Python doesn't know. Because remember, when we were doing this earlier, when we just wrote out the word true, it was like, what the heck are you talking about? True isn't a thing in Python, right? So now we have a print statement, and the function is going to try to write it, and it's just going to see that this random word Cosmo is just sitting here. It's not a string data, it's not an integer, it's not a Boolean, it's just some random piece of text or interrupting the code. So what we can do is two things. We can use single quotes, so that way we can have, because the single quote won't end at a double quote. You can use two single quotes to make a string, or you can use two double quotes to make a string. But a single quote and a double quote won't make a string. You know what I mean? Like if you have a single quote and then you try to finish it off with a double quote, this won't be recognized as a string. You can use two single quotes. You can use two single quotes, or you can use two double quotes. You can't use like the opposite. Whoa. All right, so let's delete this. So now that we use single quotes, we can print out hello Cosmo, right? So that's cool. But then it comes to a point like, okay, but what if we say like, I'm Cosmo? So now we want to use both single quotes and double quotes in our print statement. The thing is, again, you can't output it because it's going to recognize this as a string, and then this as a string, and then this as an unfinished string, right? That's why this parenthesis is green. So this is what we can do. We can use escape sequences. An escape sequence is just command or a special character that allows you to put in certain text in a string, okay? So let's do this hello, let's say hello Bob, all right? So we want to put Bob's name in double quotes. So how can we put his name in double quotes? Well, we can just hit backslash and backslash. So if we put a backslash before this double quote, it will allow it to be recognized as part of the string text. So now we can hit F5, and now it will say hello Bob in quotes. So now we can put quotes, and the same thing for single quotes. If we want to put his name in single quotes, we don't need to use escape sequences if we're using single quotes, because the string is composed of double quotes, right? But if I want to do something like I can't code well, and we use single quotes for whatever reason, this is going to cause an error. So we can just put a backslash in front of the single quote, and when we run it, it will say I can't code well. There you go. So there are other escape sequences. So this is one line, and we can make a new one, a new print statement, and saying this is another line. So now if we output this, we have two print statements that print on two different lines, right? But what if for whatever reason we want one print statement that can print on two different lines? Well, we can just take our text here. I'm gonna cut this, and there's an escape sequence for new lines. So we can use \n and then add this to the end here. And n, so this backslash n resembles a new line. So if we hit F5, it's also going to do the same thing that this thing did, right? So it can get kind of confusing, so I'm not going to do that. But there's other ones like backslash t will do a tab. So it will tab out this line. All right, so these are some cool escape sequences, but how would you just put a backslash in a string now if it's going to be recognized as an escape sequence? Well, there's an escape sequence for a backslash. It's just a backslash backslash. So now if we hit F5 and run our program, it will say this is one line, right? And there's the backslash right here. So that way it recognizes this backslash as a backslash rather than trying to like tab this, right? Because if we made this lowercase t, and if we wanted a backslash and then this is one line, if we ran this, it's just going to do his is one line, right? Because it recognized this as an escape sequence. So we can do a backslash backslash, and we can hit 5, and it will recognize this as this is one line rather than with the backslash included, right? Now we're going to talk about doc strings, right? So we talk about this comment right here, you know, this is a comment. We can make multi-line comments. So let's say this is a program that outputs hello. All right. And it also does stuff, right? And you keep writing more and more stuff, right? So instead of having all of these comments, we can use something called a doc string. And it is resembled by 3 double quotes and 3 double quotes. Now everything in between this doc string or the string can be used as like a multi-line comment basically, right? So this, that, and the other, common sense is not common. So now we can make multiple line comments, and if we run this program, it's only going to output hello world. Now the cool thing about doc strings is that they still work as strings, but more importantly, they work as multi-line strings, right? So this program will recognize this doc string. It'll recognize that these two are on 2 different lines. So if we run this, it prints, you know, these on 2 different lines. So that's also really helpful if you're trying to do something like. So now it's time we get into operations, right? Operators, operations. So let's head over to our module. And like I showed you earlier, you can actually run operations in the Python module. And we can also print, you know, 1 plus 1. And if we run it, it will print out 2, right? So these do the same thing, because like I mentioned earlier, if we just do a 1 plus 1 in here and we run this, nothing's going to happen because these are integers, because integers don't need anything to represent them. And you know, it will run the code and it will just recognize the operation. We're not outputting anything, so the code won't do anything, right? So there are different operators in Python, right? The first one is the addition operator, which is the plus sign. So we can do 1 plus, I don't know, 58, and we'll get 59. We can do 3 plus 8, and we'll get 11. So this allows us to add numbers together, or add 2 data types together, right? Then there's the subtraction operator. We have 8, whoops. You can do things like 8 minus 9, we'll get -1. 7 minus 5, we'll get 2. Then we have things like multiplication. 1, we can use the little asterisks to represent multiplication. And we can do 1 times 8, that's 8. 7 times 9, that's 63, all right? And then division is represented by the /, right? So we can do 5 divided by 4, and we'll get 1.25, right? So the thing with division is that although these by default are integer values, division by default is a float value. So even if you do 10 divided by 5, it's going to be 2.0. It's going to be a float value rather than an integer value, all right? And that's because it's division, and there's going to be times where you're going to get equations like this. So instead of having to figure out whether we should, rather than the program figuring out if it needs to be a decimal point or an integer, it's just by default is a float. So that way it doesn't have to worry about any other external calculations or anything like that. All right. Now to do exponents, like 5 squared or something, you could use the multiplication operator twice. So 5 to the power of 2 is 25. We can do 3 to the power of 2, that's 9. We can also do it to, powers of like 5 or whatever. 5 to the power of 5, that's 3,125, right? So back to the topic of division, right? When you're doing division, by default, it gives us the decimal point or the decimal value. But let's say you want the remainder, then you can use the modulus operator. The modulus operator is the percent sign, and if you do 1 modulus 4, we'll get 1, because 1 divided by 4 is 1 or whatever, something like that. Or it's 0.25. So yeah, this is the remainder. It has a remainder of 1. 5 modulus 4, and 5 modulus 4 has a remainder of 1, while 5 divided by 4 has 1.25. Now there's also quotients, right? So we can do 1, and then we can use the divided by operator twice. Let's not use 1, let's use 5, and then the quotient operator, which is 2 /, and then 4, and that's also 1. So if we do like 132, and then we want to find the quotient with 8, that's 16. Well, 132 divided by 8, is that still 16? Okay, that would be 16.5, right? So we can find quotients as well. Now, these were all with integer or float values, right? You can do 2.5 times 2, and we will get, a float value of 5.0. So, first of all, operations with floats will result with a float. So if there is a float in the operation, whether you're doing, even if you add it after, it will still be 5.0 because there's a float in the operation, so the value will be a float. If you're doing 2 operations with integers, then the value will be an integer, okay? So now we're coming to a point where, okay, cool, you can do operations with integers and floats, but what about strings? So you can actually do math operation or operations with strings, right? So if we have a string, hello, and we can actually add that string to the string world. There's a space because when you add them together, there won't be like a space or anything. It's just going to merge the text. But when we do hello plus world strings, we get the output of hello world. My name is, and then we can add Cosmo. So my name is Cosmo. See, I didn't add a space here. It's going to connect the 2 strings together. So when you're adding 2 strings or you're adding 2 data types, it's called concatenation, right? Or specifically with strings, when you're concatenating, it's connecting 2 or more data types to one value, okay? So if we were to print, hello, and plus our world, and I'm gonna add that space there, when we run this program, it's going to output hello world. The same way if you print hello world. See how these have the same output? So you can actually concatenate these two strings or add strings together, right? But you can also do this with other data types, right? So we can have like hello 5. Actually, you know what? That doesn't even make sense. My favorite number is. So will this output right? Can we add a string to an integer? What do you think? Well, when we run it, there's an error because you can't add, there's no numeric value to 5. I mean, there's no numeric value to the string. You can add this text to this number. But if this number was a string, so it recognizes it as text and not a number, you can run this again, and it will say my favorite number is 5. So that'll kind of help you understand the difference between an integer and a string. So let's take this 5 again, right? And what happens if we multiply 5 by 2? Now here's the thing, right? 5 has no numeric value, so it's not going to be 10. And if we can multiply it, it would probably, like, without it resulting in an error, what would happen, right? Well, you can multiply strings. And when you multiply strings, it will kind of increment its existing value by the number you multiply it by, right? So if we do 5 times a string 5 times an integer of 2, it's going to print 5 twice. So you're basically saying print 5 2 times, right? So we can do hello, and if we do that, it's going to print the string hello hello twice. Now, if we wanted to, we can convert data types, right? So if we have the string 5 and we want it to be multiplied with 2, we can do int times 2. So int stands for integer, all right? And this integer function will take an input of 5 and run an operation on it and return it as an integer, right? So it will return this 5 as an integer, and then it will multiply this integer by 2. So when we run this, it will print 10. Because when we did it earlier, this will print 55. But because we converted the data type from a string to an integer using this integer function, we can multiply together to get 10. Now the same thing works with other data types, right? So for these different what's it called, converting data types or data conversion, for strings it's str into parentheses, all right? For integers it's it's int in these parentheses. And then for floats, it's floats in 2 parentheses. So these are the data type conversion functions. All right. So if you ever want to convert data types, these are the functions you would need to do so, okay? Now, I suggest saving this or writing this down because you should be taking notes. If you aren't taking notes for whatever reason, you should be taking notes. And now you have these functions available. So let's practice with like, so if we take an integer of 5, right? If we take the string of 5 and convert it into an integer, let's convert this integer into a string. So when we print this, Oh, whoops. It will print 22222 because it will take the number 5 and print this string version of 2. So basically what this is doing looks like this: 5 times the string of 2. So let's run that. So these are the same thing, right? We're just converting data types. So you're like, what's the point of converting data types, right? We'll get into that later. But basically, when we talk about getting user input, by default, user input is a string because they're typing in random things on a keyboard. If we ask them for a number, we need to convert the string of what they entered into a numeric value that we can use. All right. So let's save this as. You can do this by Control-Shift-S, and we can call this data convert. All right, and let's actually open our hello world.py, because I want you guys to have this program. So we can just say this prints hello world, and then print hello world. There you go. So that way, just so you guys can keep your projects and stuff. So let's make a new project. We're going to kind of dive into the topic of variables, all right? So let's hit Control-Shift-S, and we're going to call this variables.py, all right? And then we can delete all this. So now we have our variables.py. It should say variables.py in the top left section right here. What is a variable, right? You hear me saying the word variable, and I'm sure if you guys are taking algebra, you probably are familiar with a variable. But the thing is, variables in programming languages are very different, not very different, but are pretty different than variables in algebra, right? So a variable is just a data structure that allows us to assign data to a name of our choice, right? I know it sounds complicated, but it's very straightforward. So let's make a variable called my variable, right? Just my var, and it will be equal to the number 5. Variables, we can make variables by the assignment operator. And the assignment operator is this equal sign, right? Because we have, quotient operator, the modulus operator, the exponent operator, division operator, multiplication operator, subtraction operator, etc. There's different operators in Python. This is the assignment operator, and the assignment operator just assigns a value to our variable. So remember when I was talking about earlier, let's say if we write text, this is going to crash, or there's going to be an error because it has no idea what text is. It's just some random thing. But my variable, because we assign, or let's do the same thing with text. If text, because we assign it the value of 5, when we run it, nothing's going to happen because we didn't output anything, but there's no error because now it knows that text is a variable because we assigned it the value of 5. All right. Now there are some rules to writing variables, right? So right here, we'll call this variable notes, I guess. All right. So let's make a doc string here. So variables, they're created with the assignment operator, right? So created with assignment operator, which is the equal sign, all right? And they can't start with a number. This is just I don't know specifically why Python doesn't let you make it start with not just a number, with an integer or a number, right? So text equals 5. This is a variable that works fine. But if we did 5, oh, this is the reason why. If it starts with a number, if you make a variable that starts with a number, you can't assign the integer value of 5 equal to the integer value of like 8. Like, that doesn't make sense. 5 is not, you can't assign the value of 5 to 8. And for the record, this equal sign right here, we're calling it the assignment operator. Don't say text equals 5. Say text is assigned the value of 5, okay? Because the equal sign in Python or in programming languages has nothing to do with the equal sign. So because of that, no variables can start with a number. So even if it's 5 var or something, this variable will not work. Invalid syntax, see? So it has to start with text. You can still use numbers though. Like you can call this number 5 and run this and it'll be perfectly fine, all right? You can also use underscores as in place of spaces, because you can't use spaces. They have to be one conjoined value, right? So we can do number 5 equals 5, right? That's fine. You can do number 5 equals 5. You can do that. You can do number 5. This is called Camel Case because every word starts with a capital letter and it kind of like humps like a camel. Number 5 like is cool or something, right? So in the Python language, although you can do that, good programming practice is that they start with the lowercase letter and they use underscores instead of camel casing, because camel casing is typically used for a different thing in Python that we'll get into later in the future. But just so that way you have some context, this is what, the Python, how we write variables in Python, all right? So that's how we, make variables. So what can we do with this variable, right? Well, first of all, we can output it. We can print our number. And if we run this, it'll print the number 5. So that's cool. And we can, change the value of 5, right? So let's go and, so number, equals 7. So, and then we can print what the number used to be right here. So if we run this, it's going to print 5 and it's going to print 7 because we changed the value of our number. I just realized I spelled start wrong right here, so I'll fix that. So this is helpful if you're making a large program that relies on the same value, but it's going to be changing a lot. So instead of going through your entire code and changing each time the number 5 shows up with the number 7, you can just reassign the variable to 7 and it will just print and use that value throughout the rest of your program. We can also delete our variables. So if we delete number, so the del statement, or which stands for delete, will just delete your variable value. So we can delete our number. So if we try to print number, there will be an error, right? Because the number value doesn't exist. So we have the number 5, it's like, cool, so we can print the number 5. Now we have the number 7, cool, we can print the number 7 like we did here. Now that we deleted the variable, when we try to print it, it's like, what the heck is number? No, this number thing you're talking about doesn't exist, right? Because there's no number value because we deleted the number value right here. So all of this is pretty much obsolete. Now let's get into variable operations, right? So of course we can reassign variable values using the assignment operator. And if we want to add on to save data, so let's say if we want to add one to the number value. So number is equal to our number plus 5. So when we print our number, it started off with 5, then the number is going to equal our number plus 5. So it adds 5 to our number. So 5 plus 5 is 10, and then it will print out that number. Now, same thing when we assign variables, they can be any data type. They can be word, right? And we can say word plus equals, 5. I mean, number equals number plus the string text of 5. And when we run this, we'll say word and then word 5, right? Because we're concatenating data to this word. There's an easier way to do this, because number equals number plus 5 is cool, but we can do number plus equals 5. This is the same exact thing as number equals, so same as number equals number plus 5. All right. So let's just do the number 5, and then we'll just do the number 5 here. Cool. So number plus equals 5 is the same thing as number equals number plus 5. Right? So when we print or run this code, it's going to do the same exact thing it did before, because it is the same thing. It's just a shortcut, so you don't have to write all of this. You can just write this. All right. Now, this works with other operators as well. So we can do number equals, number minus 3. So when we'll copy this. So we can do number equals number minus 3. And when we run that, because our new number is 10, it will be 10 equals 10 minus 3. So now we have 7. This is cool and all, but we can shorten this, right? So same as number equals number minus 3. So we can just do the same thing, but instead we can do number minus equals 3, because it's the same thing. Plus equals 5. This does the same exact thing, all right? So when we run this code, it's the same output, because number equals number minus 3. That's what this operator does. Minus equals equals number minus equals is just number equals number minus 3. These are the same things. This is the same thing. So you can also do this with, so this works with other operators, right? Number divided by equals 3 or 4. So if we do that, we never printed it out, right? So if we run this, it gets us 1.75, because we take in our number 7, and then we assign the variable number equal to 7 divided by 4. It's very straightforward. It's very simple. So this works with other operators like division, and we can do multiplication. So we can run this, and now it equals 28, because it just takes in our number value and sets it and assigns it the value of our number value times 4. So you can save this, and let's hit Control-Shift-S, and let's make a new variable. I'm sorry. Let's make a new file. We'll call this user input.py. Save it, and we can get rid of all this stuff in here. Cool. This is how we can get input from the user. Now, unlike other languages like Java, where you have to import a whole module and do all this other stuff to get user input, Python has a user input function built in. This function is called input, right? So this will take in user input. So let's put in the string, what is your name? So if we don't add a space at the end, we can say, what is your name? So we can say, well, my name is Cosmo, and we enter that. Cool. But now it's like one word, so it looks kind of weird. So we can, what I typically do is like a space colon space, just so it can look nice. So what is your name? And then we can do Cosmo is my name. And there you go. So that's cool, but you can't do anything with that, right? With variables, we can save it. So name equals input, what is your name? So when we run this, it will say, what is your name? We can do Cosmo. And now we have this variable that saves the name in memory. So here's the thing about variables. This name variable will get the user name, right? And we can run it and we can give it like, I don't know, Bob. So cool. Now the name was assigned to the variable named Bob. So if we tried to print out the previous version of this name, and we run it, it's going to error. Because what the heck is name? We didn't define name yet. Name doesn't exist because Python runs from top to bottom. So when we print name, it doesn't know what you're talking about. And then when we print name here, so if we run it here and then run it, then it will work. Oh, okay. So when you want us to output this name, you're talking about this thing up here. Because Python can't read below, it will run it line by line, right? This name function. So when we give it our name Bob, and it will print Bob, this name only exists when you run it. As soon as the program ends, it no longer has access to this name Bob, right? It'll just ask you for your name again. So hopefully that helps you understand what this does, right? So with this name, now that we have the user's name, we can print your name is / quote, remember? And then we can concatenate it. And then we can have another / quote. So when we run this, you can say, what is your name? You can say Bob, and it will say your name is Bob in quotes. So there you go, right? This is everything you learned, right? We're using escape sequences here. We're using concatenation, and we're printing, out the user's name. And now you know how to get user input. And by the way, user input by default is a string. The last thing I want to talk about is concatenating, right? Because concatenating is, I always find it helpful for connecting variable names together or variable data together, but I don't usually find it helpful for connecting strings together because it becomes really long like this. Well, let's comment our code because that's good practice, right? So we'll say gets user input, and then this says prints user's name. To save your program, then hit Control-Shift-S, and we're going to make a new program called format strings.py. All right, so now we can delete all this. Let's talk about string formatting, okay? So this is the last section because I know this video is getting this lesson is getting pretty long, but this is the last section. So when we use string formatting, you're basically embedding data into a string, okay? So that's what you're doing when you're doing string formatting. So let's get some variables in here. So we'll do name equals, let's do Bob, then age. Let's say Bob is, I don't know, 25 years old. And yeah, that's it, all right? So with concatenation, this is what would be outputted, right? So you say your name is, and then it would concatenate the name variable, and then and you are the age variable, years old. All right, so this is our program. All right, whoops. It takes in, so we're just pretending that this gets user input, okay? So we get the name Bob and the age 25. And 25 needs to be a string because this would crash otherwise. So we have the name of Bob and the age of 25. So when we're doing concatenation, this is what we would have to be, or this is what we would do in order to print out that your name is Bob and you are this years old, right? So if we can actually print this, your name is Bob and you are 25 years old. Cool. So now we can get into string formatting. All right. So string formatting, we can print the same message. Your name is. So where you're going to put your variable names, instead of concatenating it, we can put some curly braces there to represent where we want data to be, okay? So your name is this, and we want data to be here, years old, okay? So we know that we want data to be right here and right here, the data for their name and the data for their age, all right? So in order to do that, we can do a dot format. Now this is a method, and a method is basically a function that is part of a class or an object or something, or in this case a string, because pretty much everything in Python is an object. So this string has a format, right? So just know that an object is pretty much this, or this, or this, or this, right? They're all objects, right? But functions specifically are something that, take an input, do an operation on that input, and return an output. Strings, they are a data type. So this dot format method is just a function of a string, or a function of a data type, or a function of a class, or something else. We're going to get into that later. So method is just a function of an object, all right? So, so we can actually format. So we want the first area where we want data to be the name variable. And we want the second one to be the age variable, all right? So if we print this out, because remember there's two opening parentheses, so we need two closing parentheses. So when we run this, so you can see they say the same name. Your name, and your name is Bob and you're 25 years old. Your name is Bob and you're 25 years old. These do the same exact thing, all right? So now we can get even deeper into this concept and use F strings. So F strings stand for formatted strings. Okay, and we can print so when we're making an F string, we start off by making a string, and right in front of the string will be the letter F, okay? So this F will represent that this string right here is an F string. Now an F string is the same thing as a formatted string, except it allows us to do this format method within the line, within the text of the string, all right? And I'll show you how that works. So your name is, we want data to be here, and we want data to be here as well, years old, right? So now we can literally, because this is an F string, it will recognize that we want data to be here and we want data to be here. So we can put our first piece of data, the name, and the second piece of data, the age. Because we know that these variables are the data that we want to be outputted to our string. So now we can run this, and this will also do the same exact thing. So all three of these do the exact same thing. It's just whatever is more convenient for you. Clearly, I've always found F strings to be the easiest because it's the same thing as a normal print statement, just with the letter F in front of it, and then you can label what data you want to go into the string. But the thing is with this is that it allows you to parse in any data. So instead of age, we can do like 2 plus 2. And it will see, okay, we want to use the data of 2 plus 2 in here, right? So if we run it, it's going to say you are 4 years old, right? Or we can say age plus equals 20, I don't know, or 30. Oh, age isn't a number. I forgot, my bad. So let's say age is a number. So here's the thing, right? With age, this with concatenation, all this has to be string value. So all data has to be a string. Like if age is a number and we run this, it's gonna crash because you can't add age to a string because it's a number. So all of this has to be string text, right? So with this, we could instead of using the age variable, we'll just use 25 because this age variable is oh, you know what we could do? We can use string data conversion like I was talking about earlier. So let's make this an integer, age, and we can add the number 30. So when we run this, see, you are 55 years old, right? So we're just going to leave it with age so that way you guys can save this and have it as reference. But just to show, and this can be any, it's automatically converted, right? So if we comment out this print statement, if we make 25 an integer and we run this, it's not going to have any issues because this can be any data type. So this can also be any data type, right? I'm just going to copy this. So this can also be any data type because 25 is an integer and we can add the integer into the string. But if it's an integer with this, it has to be a string when you're concatenating. So I've always found a good practice if you're outputting information using F strings, if you're going to have variables attached or different pieces of data attached. I just found using F strings is the easiest and most familiar way to do it. All right, so that's it for this lesson. Now we're going to get into the practice. So if you want to try the practice by yourself, you can go ahead and do it. So basically, the practice is we're going to be making a survey. You need to be able to ask users some questions and then output their responses. That's it. That's all you have to do. If you want to, you can also do other projects, like you can try to make some sort of account creator, using this information. You can also try to add, subtract, multiply, divide different values that your user inputs to you, and then you can return the output. Those are some project ideas for this, or different practice ideas. But for this practice, we're going to be making some sort of survey where you can ask, where the program will ask you questions, and you can input your information, and you can answer the questions, right? So let's go ahead and do that. Now, if you want to do the practice by yourself again, you can exit off this point and practice. If you want to keep practicing with me, then go ahead and stay. So we're going to save this program, and now we're going to save as, so we can make a new program, and we're going to call this survey.py. I'm going to delete everything in here. Okay. So this at the very top, we'll make a comment saying survey practice. So this is going to be your first official program, right? We can annotate that this is going to be created by me, but you can put your own name in here. Cool. So survey practice, we can just say ask users for input. So ask users questions, outputs, responses. All right, and this is of course created by me, but you can put your own name. So the first thing I want to do is make the banner, and the banner is just the title, right? So we're going to print, and let's call it survey. Survey. Cool. Next thing we're going to do is get user input. So user input, and this will be their first name. All right. So we can do first name and have that be equal to the input and into the input function. And in here, we're going to ask them, what is your first name? And then the space colon space I typically do, just to make it look more professional. And then we can get some more user input. So let's ask them for their last name. Last name equals input. What is your last name? And then we can have that be outputted here. Then let's get some more user input. And this will be their age. So we can do age equals input. How old are you? And the space colon space we usually do. What else can we put in here? Let's ask them for their favorite color. User input, favorite color. And we'll ask them, so we'll say favorite color equals input. And we'll ask them, what is your favorite color? Awesome. So now we ask the users for all this user input, right? We're getting their first name, their last name, their age, and their favorite color. So let's make a variable for their full name, and their full name will equal their first name. Oh, whoops. So full underscore name will equal their first name and then okay, so we'll use F strings because I don't know what I'm doing. So full name will equal an F string. So we'll ask them for their first name, and then we'll have a space, and then we'll ask them for their last, well, not ask them, we'll use their last name. So their full name is their first name, space, last name. And we can use that using F strings. All right. Now in here, we can have the results from the survey, right? So we can print an F string. And in this F string, we will say here are your results, and then we'll have their full name in here. So we can print, let me go down a little bit. Right. So we can print an F string, and we'll use \t as a way to tab it under, and then we'll say your name is, we'll use a \quote, we'll say your name is full name, \quote. Cool. So it will have a hyphen, it will say your name is, and then it will print out their full name. All right. Then we can print the same F string, and then with the \tag, and then space out, and then we'll say you are age years old. Right. And then we can make one more print statement, and we can say \tab, and then your favorite color is, and then we can use the F string to parse in their favorite color, and add that right there. That's it, actually. So this is our program. So we have a banner. It will ask them for their first name, their last name, their age, and their favorite color. We'll create a variable to hold their full name, and then we'll print the results. So let's run this. Survey. So what is your first name? My first name is Blue. Oops. What is your last name? We'll say Cosmo. We'll say how old are you? We'll say 100 years old. And what is your favorite color? My favorite color is green. And then here are your results. So just to make it look a little bit prettier, let's have a \n to make a new line when they do all of that. So we can hit F5. So survey. And actually, let's have a new line after here. Cool. So when we run this code, it'll say survey. What is your name? Blue, Cosmo, I'm 100 years old, and green. So here are your results. And I'll make that look wider. So congratulations, you just made your first program. It says here are your results, Blue Cosmo. Your name is Blue Cosmo, you're 100 years old, and your favorite color is green. So you just made your own program where you can get user input. You can, do any operation with it if you want. You can add to their age if you want to, if you can make them look older as a joke. Let's say if I put like my age was like 20 or something, and then in the program, you can have their age like be times by like 2000 or something, and just as a joke. So you can, show this code to your family because you just made a working, project. So good job. Let's save that, and let's look at the projects we made today, right? So if we go to module 1, you made 6 different projects today. You made 6 different scripts, and it's only been module 1. And now you have your own hello world.py, you have a survey.py, you can get user input, and you learned a whole lot today. So if you want to keep practicing, make your own projects, add on to the code we made here. You can ask them more questions, or make your own questions. Like I was talking about earlier, you can kind of like make an account creator or something, like enter your username, enter your password, and then save that data. Do let your creativity flow, but don't stop here, because in the next module we will be covering I forgot. Let me see what are we covering next module? Oh, Booleans and Conditionals. This is cool. So basically, it will allow us to do something if something happened, or run a certain piece of code if something happens. So let's say when I was talking about the account creator that you can make, you could say like, if they are, 100 years old, print something else. Or if they're not 100 years old, or if they're under the age of this, or you can do a whole lot of stuff. So that's what we're doing in the next module. So I'll see you guys there. So make sure to leave a like on this video and subscribe to the whole YouTube algorithm thing. And I will see you guys in the next module. So stay happy, stay positive, and as always, happy hacking.